Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here, hanging out with you. Hope everybody is having a great day. Uh, I wrestled. Um, I wrestled a great deal with whether I was going to stream what I had to say live or if I was just going to record. I wrestled with whether or not I would actually uh, copy or attach some of the video footage of what was actually being said on the panel that was forwarded to me. And I decided I wasn't going to actually do it. Number one is I didn't want any type of copyright infringement being used as a way to ding the channel uh, because there are all kind of different strategies being deployed to quiet the voice of new black media, alt black media, which I'm a part of, and so many more. I decided just to sit down, create the background I created, and talk about this for a minute. Uh, I have addressed Roland Martin, and it took me a long time to actually get to a point to where I wanted to openly and directly address it. Those of you know me know I am real big on keeping black conflict within the black collective. If I have a problem with a brother, I normally go directly to him. Nobody's ever seen me beefing directly with a black man I have even the slightest bit of respect for that I think may be in the community. We may be at odds. We may have differing opinions. We may have differing philosophies, but I never use that as a reason to go out and attack someone. I'm not in a competition. I'm not looking to move in on anybody's lane. I know who I am. I'm very confident in who I am. I spend a lot of time doing what I do. I believe in what I do. I'm not unteachable. I am not recalcitrant. I am not a person that's sitting there just believing that my way or the highway. So I give people the space to be themselves. Where I have a problem is when I see someone and I know their behavior is directly detrimental to the black collective. When I know that deep down inside, they know better. When I know that it's all about them protecting their space. And there are a number of different ways that you can evaluate someone and tell whether or not what they're doing is of good intent, maybe poor choice making, or if it's ill intent and they're specifically doing something that has more to benefit them than it does the collective. And you have to understand the dynamics of how things have been done for years. It took me a while to get here with Roland. No, I didn't get to see that. I'll have to check that out. If you've got a link, you can share that. Um, you can share that. But let me see if I can do this whole thing. But okay, some of it will, some of it won't. Okay, I'll have to figure that in a minute. We'll just do it like this for now. Apologize, just getting some things done. Apologize, should have done this before, but it wasn't really on my mind. But anyway, no, I'll have to check out the whole Tulsa thing. You know, it's amazing. Everybody jumps on things that we've been talking about for years, things we've done research into for years. And this is why I've kind of brought this up. I've already addressed this, but like I said, back to the original point. It took me a while to get to the point where I wanted to openly express my disdain from Roland Martin. Number one is I'm a native Houstonian. I'm actually back living in Houston now. Roland is a graduate of one of the most prestigious black high schools in Houston, Jack Yates High School, which literally sits in between TSU and the University of Houston in the historic Third Ward division of or community of Houston. So much history there, so much respect. Some unbelievable people have come out of Jack Yates, and I'm a proud Houstonian. So I wanted to believe that maybe he was just misguided. I wanted to believe that maybe he was just a part of a very large part of our collective that has been sold on the fact that Democrats are the saviors of Black people. And that's a very common thread, because if you look at from the Voting Rights Act of the 60s, the Civil Rights, passing of the Civil Rights Bill of the 60s, and you look at from that point forward, there has been an increasing voter turnout among Blacks every presidential election cycle. So we are voting in higher numbers each time. And with the exception of 2016, the Trump election, where we dipped a little as far as voter turnout. But one thing has been consistent regardless of the turnout, and that is roughly around 90% of Blacks vote straight Democrat. It's something that has been inculcated into our psyche. It's something that has been a part of our culture. It's a very embedded belief, and it is what we do. But very few people actually take the time to track progress. This is what I actually do. I don't just regurgitate what I heard someone say. I'm a researcher. I'm a searcher of facts. And I don't do it in the sense of protecting a bias, because see, that's the thing called bias research or bias confirmation. What is that? That means I literally go look for facts that support what I believe. And then I present those facts as the absolute all in the situation. I don't research that way. Matter of fact, I take my bias and I try to prove it wrong. That's how I start my research. If I hold the belief, I try to prove it wrong in my research. So I'm looking for all of the data that says what I think is wrong. So that forces me to listen to people, study people, research people that are in diametric opposition to who I am and what I believe. It forces me to give them an audience, to give their work, their research, their data, their statistics. Now, after I've done that, now I have to go out and I find it. There's another way that I grade what I research. Who funded the research? Because who funds the research has a massive impact on the type of data that's going to be produced. And the bend, yes, you can do scientific research, but you can still put a bend on it based on what you want. When you are a scientist, you know how to produce the results that you want to produce. That's not the goal of real true research. It's not to produce the end result you want. It's to produce the most accurate representation of what's happening, or what you're discovering, or what you're presenting. And so when I go into it, it's a long process of learning and studying. So my whole thing is, when I look at Roland Martin, he presents a person that knows better. He has a level of intellect that tells me he knows better. He's a person who's well read. He's read. He knows. The bottom line is, towing the Democratic line is what he does to hold his position and to attempt to maintain relevance. The problem is, what you're finding, if you actually look and you start to look at Abrams and Lance Bottoms and all of these other Dems that were put into positions during this surge of the last 5 or 6 years, that they're one by one being picked. And what I can tell you about the Democratic machine is that when it finishes using you, it doesn't just discard you, it tries to destroy you. Why? Destroy the credibility of the person that you're dismissing, so that if they get a wild hair in their ass and they decide to come back and tell where the bodies are buried, nobody's listening. Go back and look at all these people that were thrown out there in St. Louis and Chicago and Atlanta and Baltimore, and look how they're now being torn down and destroyed. That's not happening from the Republicans. That's coming from the Democrats. And all you got to do is find. That's what I absolutely love about my partner, Neota. Unbelievable researcher, unbelievable tracker of events. And she has, without fail, produced over and over again just this thing. And now she's gotten to where she's predicting it. And it's happening. But that's not why I'm here. Why I'm here is because Donald Trump is on my mind, because he's been used as a way to leverage Black votes for Democrats. And we're totally ignoring the fact that the push for Biden has produced absolutely nothing for blacks. We've looked up and we've seen sporadic attacks on Asians amplified and immediate responsive legislation produced in less than a year. Okay. And then we're frustrated by it, but we don't understand that it wasn't because they voted Democrat or Republican. It was because they came together and they put together a united economic front. They represent a strong economic impact. They came in and they decided that they were going to flex their economic power or their economic muscle. They are Asians, regardless of ethnicity and nationality. Asians are the number one earning median, surpassing whites in America. They're at roughly close to 100% in median wealth. I mean, $100,000 in median wealth, trailing whites by only about 30, depending on what study you look at. And they function. And this isn't a don't vote rally, but it is an understanding of the power of the vote and the value of the vote. And one of the problems that I have when people start talking about you've got to vote and you have to vote for the lesser of two evils is what was being used to present to blacks. You've got to vote for Biden, or the alternative is Trump. The bottom line is you don't realize that voting is not just about electing officials. That's on the constituent side. On the actual political and government and elite power player side, it's a litmus test. In other words, people don't participate in things they don't believe in. What do I mean by that? I mean that if I don't believe my vote matters, I don't vote. And if I don't believe my vote matters, then I think something is wrong with the system. When I think something is wrong with the system, I eventually get to the point where I'm looking for an alternative to the current system because the current system doesn't serve me. But if I am somehow convinced that voting still works, I will consistently vote. So they're looking at voter turnout. They're looking at how many people participate from what groups, what ethnic groups and demographic groups are these votes coming from. And then you look at it and say, okay, 75% of the people voted. So 75%, at least 75% of the people believe that the system works. We're still good. If that number falls to a certain length, then they realize that people no longer have confidence in the system. They got to find a way to earn the confidence back. So they got to start finding ways to give some things that they haven't been giving, some things to sit up and reel people back in so they again believe in the system. The litmus test is what happens on voter day as far as turnout for the elite. Now, for us, we're believing that if we put the right person in, what you got to understand is this is a machine. What I can tell you is people get in with good intentions, but as time goes, you'll find all of the people that were voted in last cycle when Trump came in, a lot of the Dems that came in with him, you look at them. Biden wouldn't talk a lot of points. And then even things that he made promises on, he hasn't delivered on. He hasn't approached yet. He's been very dismissive. But what we should look at is there was no problem with him dealing with and keeping his promises as far as the LGBTQ community, and there's a bunch of other letters they've added recently. I ain't even going too far. I'm done. I'm stopping at Q. I done tried to keep up with it. I'm done. But anyway, this is a powerful entity being built. They've used a specific system. And my thing is, I study it, and my thing is, why haven't we? We get upset because LGBTQ is getting advances, and sometimes on our backs. They love to ride the backs of blacks. Things that we actually fought for and died for, they jump on, and then we end up getting pushed further in the background. Then we look at the Asians, and we get upset about that. What you don't understand is the Asians operate in an enclave. And in all the differences that they experience in ethnicity and nationality, the Chinese, the Taiwanese, the Koreans, the Vietnamese, and the Japanese, all of that comes to an end, and it's now just Asians. And they are a major player in the economy. They are the top earners. They are closing the wealth gap. The reason whites haven't lost their mind about Asians closing the wealth gap is the numbers. They don't make up a large enough portion of the population at point to be a problem. Blacks and Latinos do. So they're observing and they're looking, they're playing the games. You got to understand, it's numbers all the way around. And it's, I'll get to that, but I don't want to touch it, but it's numbers all the way around. What I want to get to is what Roland has been pushing lately. And he's got his people that he pulls on, that stands behind, that talks. And the problem is, that scares me, is anytime you can trickle the truth into something, but it's based on deception, it's dangerous. Why? Because that truth can be fact checked. And if you based it solely on that truth being a real truth, then you start to believe the whole deception. And the bottom line is, the deception is voting actually does something for Black people. Here's the thing. We've been increasingly turning out every presidential cycle since the 60s, with the exception of the year that Donald Trump got elected. We've been turning out with an increased percentage of Blacks voting. We've also consistently voted Democrat at the rate of 90% of the Black vote going towards Democrats. Then you've got to be able to explain why we are still in last place in every socioeconomic category. You've got to explain why we are actually in a worse position in home ownership. You got to explain all of these different areas in which we have not progressed, while other groups have come in and progressed and surpassed us. We voting. There is no other group that votes with the loyalty of Black people as we do for Democrats. And yet what we don't want to talk about is some of the things that happen to us that still negatively impact us, that happened under Democratic administration. And of course, no, I'm not out here championing Republicans. I'm a person that believes that the right wing and the left wing belong to the same bird. And from where I've been sitting, that bird has been shitting on the head of Black people from day one. And so to believe that a system that was never designed to work for you will somehow work for you because you're electing the people, you're just choosing the people who are going to screw over you ultimately. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a way to use your vote. I'm not saying that. But here's my thing. We talk about how valuable the vote is. We use the lie that people died for you to vote. Actually, voting rights came with the 13th Amendment. What happened is Reconstruction. Nobody wants to talk about history in the way it truly happened. Reconstruction wasn't some great thing. Reconstruction was the South reestablishing its antebellum roots, with the exception of slavery being legalized. We ushered in convict leasing, which was the precursor to mass incarceration. Convict leasing is a situation in which right after slavery, you have all of these Blacks with nowhere to go. They've been pushed off for the plantation. Many were not allowed to buy property. Many were not allowed to migrate to certain places in the North. Oregon specifically had a very strict rule about Blacks migrating into Oregon. You had 30 days to be there and get out, or you were going to be lashed for every day that you were there. Okay, that's that, and different states had different rules. So then you've got to understand, you've got to have the wherewithal and the resources to move around. We're not talking about being able to jump on a Greyhound. We're talking about you've got to have the resources to move around. So a lot of Blacks were trapped in the South. Now, the military installations that were in place from the North, from the Union Army, that were in place to hold things. Okay, we've done this. You got to understand, it was never about freeing slaves in the totality to begin with. We got to stop romanticizing what Lincoln and the Union did as some type of moral exercise. It was the only way to save the Union. The South had become too powerful economically and would have been pulling away from the Union, taking a great deal of the industrial advances and economic advances with that. And so the North would have been left hanging, so to speak. All right. So what you have to understand is that, but Nevertheless, slaves get freed in this process because slaves was one of the ways that the South was building this rapid advancing economic juggernaut was through free labor. So we had to disrupt that. So it's disrupted. Slaves are free, but they don't have anywhere to go. So what happens? Reconstruction is a 12-year period right after the Civil War, where clandestine groups like the Ku Klux Klan and other organizations were waging guerrilla warfare and clandestine attacks on military bases, and eventually the North withdrew their military. Why? Because there was too much damage in material damage and lives being lost, because it wasn't a war being waged. It was these drive-bys. You know how the Klan did it: drive-by burning, shootings, and keep riding with your hood on and keep going. The hoods were, that's where the hooding thing came from. All right, so now what's happening? Now they're easing back into things. They're blocking voters blacks from voting with all different types of mechanisms. More importantly, they are becoming more dangerous to blacks. Then they come up with convict leasing. What's convict leasing? Convict leasing is they criminalized behavior that was going to be almost always associated with blacks. Vagrancy laws. Well, if I don't have a home to live in and I've been set free, I'm pretty much a vagrant. Vagrancy laws. Black men were locked up for vagrancy up to 12, 13 years doing time. And during that time, they were then leased to plantation owners and other white businesses for their labor. So they were actually being leased out. And so again, even though it wasn't free labor, plantation owners were getting the people they had actually released back at pennies on the dollar of what they would have had to pay for labor if they played, market price. Okay, and that's just the beginning. Then there were black codes. Black codes is what stopped blacks from being able to set a foundation to build wealth in most places. While we still found a way with places like Slocum, Rosewood, Tulsa, Wilmington, East St. Louis, and so many other places, it wasn't just Tulsa that was an economic mecca. Anywhere you put black people in a collective, we seem to thrive. We learn. We practice group economics because that's all we had, and we thrived in it. That created a problem, and in every situation, that was ultimately going to be what was called a race riot, when really it was a massacre. Well, we tried to defend ourselves, but in most cases, we were overwhelmed. Hell, they bombed. They literally dropped bombs and Molotov cocktails and everything off into Greenwood subdivision of Tulsa, what affectionately known as Black Wall Street. But we had Rosewood. Some of you may have seen the movie and got a gist of what happened in Rosewood. Wilmington, which happened before Tulsa, Wilmington, North Carolina, was crazy. Again, a power move. Slocum, Texas, a power move. East St. Louis, over and over again, these things are happening. And they are empowered by the fact that there's no consequence. You got 70 years of Jim Crow. All of these things are happening. And then Daniel Patrick Moynihan does writes a report called The Negro Family, A Case for National Action, which ultimately becomes affectionately known as the Moynihan Report. And this is presented to a Democratic administration under Lyndon B. Johnson. And he specifically points out a number of different things that needs to be done because of the history of the Black family. It's a unique mechanism and component within the within the American culture and the American economic system, and things have to be taken into consideration. The trauma, he brought that out. Economic empowerment, he brought that out. And his stance was, instead of creating programs like welfare, like housing, like all these things that can be presented to Black families, primarily Black women with children, take that same money and create jobs, give Black men jobs, let Black men take care of their families, protecting the Black family nucleus in a whole. I'm not going to get into the argument of whether that's the reason the Black family is falling apart. No, there's so many different reasons why the Black family is falling apart, but that definitely did not help. Okay, here we go. Now, 55, 60 years later, we're here again, and we still haven't gained any ground. We're voting like crazy, and we're voting with a loyalty to a group that hasn't shown loyalty to us. We have to be able to explain with the type of loyalty we've shown Democrats. Yes, absolutely. These massacres was exactly what you're saying, Terry. Let me, matter of fact, highlight that so everybody can see what Terry is saying. I'm sorry if you've been missing you. This thing is, the whole terrorism thing has kind of got me right quick. So let's deal with that real quick. Let's deal with that. And I apologize for being a little scattered, but there's so much to talk about this from this whole thing is with the attack on fake conscious Negroes. And then he talked about fake historians. And then he says that most of the challenges to the stuff that they are dealing with old black media, which includes him and primarily him, everybody else is falling off. He's fighting with everything he has to remain relevant. He said they're bots. So I think I can sit here and look very clear and say, I'm not a bot. I'm a person with a belief and a theory and a philosophy based on years and years and years of research. I don't really classify myself as a historian, though I know history. My area is in social behavior, in individual psychological behavior, and what influences it. But I also understand, because I operate as a business person, I operate in economics on a regular basis. I understand how economics influence us. I've studied it because I need to know. I need to know how it influences them. I need to know how it influences our psychology. And so I understand these things, and so I talk on them. It's not to come from a place of knowing it all. It's coming from a place to present the facts. I want you to think. You don't have to agree with me, but I want you to think. I want you to think outside of what the media will present to you, because the media is controlled by those who own it, and they understand the power of the media to present a message and a narrative that will ultimately dictate how you think and how you respond. That's called propaganda. If you want to learn the basics of propaganda, go to a person who mastered it and is in many instances considered the father of propaganda. Edward Bernays wrote a book called Propaganda. Read that book. Tom Burrell, who was once the CEO of the largest black PR firm in the world, wrote a book called Brainwashed. I suggest you read it. It's going to show you how the narrative is being written, how the media is presenting it. No matter what media outlet you get, 13,000 plus primaries that are out there, and they're controlled by 6 powerful men primarily, under a number of different coverings from ABC to Viacom and so many others. But you got 6 people who are the part of the wealthy elite that's dictating narrative. If you don't look beneath the surface of what's being given to you, you can only take the narrative, and the narrative now is being written. And if you allow someone to write the complete narrative of your life, they control how you move in your life. You have to understand that. You've got to get to the point where you're writing a narrative, that you're doing the research, and that you're gaining understanding, that you're developing an idea of truth, that you're able to undress whatever's presented to you by whoever. I've told you from day one, when you come to me, don't take my word on it. Take it. Go break it down. Go research it. Go look at it. Go find what you need to find to come to your own conclusion. You got to learn to think critically. You got to get outside of the narrative of mainstream media. That is not going to put people who have been historically at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder anywhere but where they're at, because that's how the narrative has always been written. You were never meant to be at the top. Now, some of us make it to the top. And the question is, how do we make it to the top? A large majority of us make it to the top by presenting this idea that if I can do it, you can do it, and that there's no such thing as racism, or that my group isn't racist, that group is racist, and you need to trust my group. In other words, they become the buffers, the overseers. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There's absolutely nothing more dangerous to black progress than a black person with a white agenda. And it's a bunch of people fighting to have those positions to present the white agenda to blacks. You've got to have some help. You can't operate on your own. You got to have some help. Well, if I'm consistently coming to a group and saying, well, if I've got to have some help from the government and I'm trusting you and I'm consistently getting the same results, at what point in time, tell me as an individual, You go to any psychiatrist, any psychology, any type of situation. Hold on one second. Any type of situation. You study going, but you're not getting. If in any type of situation, you go to an individual as an individual, you go to someone to get help, whether it's a life coach, whether it's a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a therapist, or whatever. At what point will any of those people tell you, you've been trying this for the last 15 years, just keep doing it, eventually it's going to work? Or are they going to sit up and say, you need to change your thinking, you need to change your approach, you need to change your strategy, you need to change the way that you are viewing this, because obviously it's not working for you? If you've sit up and said, I've been voting religiously, increasingly participating in voting over the last 55 years, and I've got no increase in my return, at what point am I going to say, this isn't really working for me the way it should? Especially when I'm looking at others who don't participate at the level I participate, Asians, getting what they want. At what point are we going to realize that this isn't about a vote? It's about economic power. Why? Because your vote carries no power if you can't influence the people in power the way that people in power are influenced. They pander for your votes. They take action based on your lobbying. They take action based on how you can invest in their careers. That's the thing. Politics has become a career. If you can't influence their career other than a vote, which happens every 4 years, and the people who can literally write a narrative, the people with power, the people who own the media outlets can literally write a narrative that will put them in a position and a light that people will vote for them. How are you going to ever really play the game? Let me break that down for you in case you didn't get it. You get to vote for president every 4 years. Just say the president. We're going to take it to the highest level. We're going to get to vote. You're going to vote for the president. Now, you vote every 4 years, and the president or the candidate for president is going to make promises to you of what they're going to do for you, right? And then you get in there and you realize that he got in and he ain't doing nothing he said he was going to do. But now you don't have any way to really get at it because you have no economic power. So you got to sit up and fume for the next 4 years and hope that enough people like you can maintain that anger at being let down for 3 or 4 years. Whenever it is, you come to the point, realize that your interests aren't being handled. So now you're hoping that enough people are upset with you. Here's the problem. There's a media outlet that's painting this person, depending on what he's delivering to the power structure in way of policy, domestic and foreign. You got to understand this thing is not just political, it's geopolitical. It's how things are moving, what kind of foreign policies are being created. This game is being played at a level so much higher than what you're dealing with in your home, in your community. You're just an instrument being used to position. And if you don't understand that, you're going to always be feeling disenfranchised because it's so much. And that's the thing. Oh, if we're talking about Dr. Anderson, absolutely not. He's definitely very clear that voting isn't how it's going to get done. My whole thing is, more importantly, when we talk about how valuable the vote is, I'm a person that talks and deals with value on a number of different levels with my clients, with my family, when I'm teaching my children, how I operate in my own personal life. Here's the thing. If something is valuable, you don't just give it up. That's one of the problems with blacks now. They don't treat their finances as being valuable. They figure when they got it, they got to spend it. Same thing with the vote. I got it. I have to spend it. Do you realize that sometimes the value in something is being willing to hold it until you find the right thing to spend it on? like for instance, the first person comes along and say, hey, look, I can do your yard for $50 and I'll do this and blah, blah, blah. And you said, man, I got to get the yard done. I got to spend it. So I'm gonna, or you get two people. Well, I can do it for 50. I can do it for 45. I'm gonna go with the guy 45. What happens if you hold and say, no, I'm looking for the right person. I got to have the right thing. If it does, I need a person that's going to trim it, cut it, do the hedges, bag it, all of that. And so you hold it and you end up spending it. You may even spend a little bit more, but you get exactly what you're looking for. And that person knows that you're very particular and it took a lot to get your money. And if they want to keep it, they got to deliver on what they told you they were going to deliver on, or somebody will replace them. And you have the money to make it happen. That's the vote. When you give it away to the lesser of two evils, somebody know they're getting it. And when it comes to Democrats, they know 90% of it is coming to them automatically. They just have to dance in front of you for a little while, say a couple of things, say the word racism 10 or 12 times, and they got you. They delivered absolutely no deliverables to you, but they just know how to play on your emotions. They know what triggers you. They know that your economic situation, because the vast majority of you are operating at or below the poverty line, that your median income is somewhere around $37,000, can't live off of that. But so they move on that. They're supposed to be better for us economically. Republicans are supposed to be robbing us with taxes. The truth of the matter is now one of them are serving us. They never have. They're serving the power structure that keeps them in power. And one of the biggest illusions that we were totally delusional about is we actually believe with a 12% representation. I think we're like 13, close to 14 now, but probably around 12 or 13 when in 2008, when Barack Obama was first elected. We actually believe we put Barack Obama in office. Now, out of that 12%, how many of us are actually qualified and registered to vote? So it wasn't the whole 12%. Same thing with the rest of the population. So it kind of balances out. You can just say, okay, with 12%, who we putting in office? It's an illusion of inclusion that makes you think you have a voice when only thing that speaks in this country is this. And if you don't know how to operate with it, you need to either learn how to move and live without it, or how to get it, and how to use it, and how to leverage it, and how to come together. They've done two things very, very, very well with us. They've got us to where we don't have a real true mindset of wealth building. And then they have us where we're divisive and divided amongst ourselves. So even if we started building wealth, we wouldn't have a natural proclivity to bring that wealth together and leverage for our benefit. That's something that has happened to us. And they keep people like this in front of us, sparking it. Because what? There's division automatically. That's one of the reasons I don't beef with my brothers. If I think you're out there and you're trying and I don't agree with your methods, we're good. You do you, I'm gonna do me. Maybe one day we can come together, bring your people, bring my people, and somewhere we find our common ground, because it is coming somewhere. If you're truly for our people, there will be a common ground. It may not be in economics, it may not be in politics, it may not be in education, but it's going to be somewhere we can all come together and mesh if we're truly for our people and not for ourselves. If we're not looking to build a platform for us, that's going to be a place and a point where we're going to come together. Now, here's the problem, though. It's people like that are constantly creating the friction, the attack. A lot of what's being said, if it was truly about growth and about the people, those are meetings that should have been had in private. And I've had my meetings with people that I have differences with in private. And whether we came to an agreement or not, that's where it stayed, in the room. And if I actually believe that that's what Roland Martin was trying to do, but I've seen Roland Martin invite people on and ambush them. So it ain't about coming to common ground or working out differences. It's about maintaining status. I got to find a way to quiet this, this backing that you're getting. I got to find a way to hush this rumbling that you're creating that's in diametric opposition to my stand. What you're talking about, the vote don't matter. Oh, no, we can't. And I'm somewhere in between. I think if you know how to use the vote, it has some leverage. I think that you got to be careful in understanding. And if you want to check it out, go to the Odyssey Project 21.tlp and look up two-party uh, two-party government, and it's not a Tea Party, it's a Confederate Party. Do those searches on that site and read those articles. It's going to give you a lot of verifiable history, link after link that you can go to verify it and come to a conclusion. And then you can sit up and kind of make your own conclusion. My whole thing is I've never told you that you had to believe anything I said. What I wanted to do is present enough to you that you had to go, that's it. I don't need the ego stroke. I don't need anybody to tell me, dude, you that dude. I have been invested in me long enough that I stroke my own ego. I don't even expect my wife to stroke my ego. She does, but I don't need her to do that. I know who I am. So this isn't about that to me. That's why I can come tell y'all when you slip hanging, because I don't worry about upsetting you. I love on you enough and I talk to you with respect. So I know you know where it's coming from, but I can call you on something that I know you're not going to agree with because you're not really feeling it, because I'm not out here to be popular. I'm not out here to be liked. I'm out here to challenge you. And a lot of times challenging people makes them uncomfortable. And I'm okay with that. That's what I do for a living. I take people out of their comfort zones. So I'm okay with that because I'm not going to be liked when I do that. So I'm never going to have the big followings that a lot of people have because I tell the truth. And when I realize something that I said isn't exactly what it should have been, I have no problem coming back and retracting. Anybody that's followed me knows that. Again, I have no ego that needs stroking. I'm not Mr. Know-it-all. I'm learning at the same time I'm teaching. I've just been learning for a lot longer than most. And I literally have a thirst for learning. So I'm constantly reading, I'm constantly studying. I've been trained to do research. When I look at people and people carry their credentials, doctors, PhDs, EDSs, Psy.Ds, and everything else under the sun. To me, it's not about what they know. To me, it tells me you know how to do research. You know how to dissect and analyze that research. You know how to disseminate in writing, definitely, that research. And to a certain level, you got to defend what you've written because that's a part of earning your doctorate. You know how to do that. So my thing is, when I see somebody like that, you should know what you're doing. You should be able to do it. But I also know that depending on who's backing them and where they can find their footing is going to have a massive impact on the direction of their research. Most of my research was funded by me. So I had to hold myself accountable. I didn't have anybody I had to please with my research. And anybody that comes in with a strong opinion can't fund my research because I'm not going to do my research to satisfy or appease you. I want to know what's best for my people. And I've come to some very, very disheartening realities in understanding my people. And I've published it in books. I've published it in articles. I've published it in scholarly papers. And I talk about it in thousands of videos. Whether it's received or not, it's not that important to me because the seed has been planted and people now have something they can refer to and at least get a starting point. See, the thing I've said and I will continue to say is this. The truth is, if we're going to ever get out of the state we're in, we're going to need men. And I say men, but it's women too. But we're going to need men who are willing to plant seeds. And you've heard me say this before. We're going to need men who are willing to plant seeds that they will not live long enough to see come to fruition. Why is that? Because you're not going to get out of something it took you 400 years to get into. 246 plus years of chattel slavery. 12 years of Reconstruction, 10 years of Black Code, 70 years of Jim Crow segregation, and then another 55 years of mass incarceration, gentrification, and miseducation. You're not going to get out of that with some quick fix. But see, the problem is with most Black men is that we don't experience power in the grand scheme of things. We are rendered powerless on purpose So when we get a position of power, we want to hold it. And we want to get patted on the back. We want acknowledgement because we don't ever get acknowledged. So we want it. So we keep looking for quick fixes. We keep looking for little panaceas that don't have any longevity. And we get out there and we throw it out there. That's not how it's going to win. I started planting seeds in the young bucks that are starting to come into their own 15, 20 years ago. They're in their 30s now, and they're doing their own thing. One of the person actually became a close friend. He started out as a mentee, but now he's my best friend. He's 15 years younger than me. I'm 14 years younger than me. But I started mentoring my planet. Why? Because I said a long time ago, by the time I'm 55, which is a little over a year from now, I don't want to be on the front lines anymore. I want to be that voice of wisdom that the young cats are running to, like Dr. Anderson, Dr. Wilson. You know, this waging war every day and coming every day, it takes a lot out of you. And the energy level simply declines. But the passion for me is strong. So I continue to do it. But I've been giving other brothers something and planting seeds and telling them, you got to plant seeds in the next generation and then cover that generation. Protect that generation from the lies. Protect that generation from the subtle suggestions of their intellectual inferiority. Protect that generation from the subtle suggestions of their natural innate criminality. Protect them from things that suggest that they are animalistic by nature. Protect them from all of these things that say they cannot succeed without the permission of someone else. You've got to be able to plant those seeds. You may not live long enough to see it, but you got to plant it and trust it, cultivate it and cover it. Those are the things that I believe in. Here's something I share with you often. An old African proverb. If there's no enemy on the inside, the enemy on the outside can do us no harm. We are so vulnerable to white supremacy, racism. We're so vulnerable to discrimination, miseducation, gentrification, so many other things because there are too many things on the inside, too much infighting, too many people like Roland Martin who are willing to destroy as many black people as he needs to hold his position with white Dems that really don't care about him and simply using him as an instrument. Because that's the power that he's held. That's been his place of influence. That's all he knows. He's fighting for dear life to protect his own personal legacy and his family. At a level, I understand that, but as a black man, I can't condone it. We have to protect the mentality of our babies. The thing is, it's a struggle. What has been such a challenge for Dr. Anderson? Let's talk about somebody I admire, somebody that I've got a chance to communicate with some time ago when I was doing the blueprint. When I was doing the blueprint for Black empowerment. Go to the Odyssey Project 21.top and look up the blueprint and you'll see it. Dr. Anderson reviewed that. He contributed to some of the things, and he and his wife Joanne acknowledged something that I did in it, and that's give him credit for the work he's done. I didn't take credit for anything that's in there that someone else did. I gave credit. I'm just taking what others have done. I'm standing on their shoulders and I'm expanding out based off of my ability to think critically. But I'm going to give credit. And so that was one of the things they did. But the thing is this, we have got to understand when I look at someone like Dr. Anderson that gave everything, the reason he had to fight so hard is because he's coming into a conditioned mind that has been conditioned to be individualized. It's individualism, consumerism, and boisterism, this thing where I'm competing with my fellow brothers for this little piece of space in the world where I can be special. And you don't understand that just being who you are makes you special when you live in the totality and the fullness of who you are. You lose that. You start to believe that you need a system to make you. And so you start to figure, if I play along with the system, I may get a piece of this pie. And you buy into the American dream, but the American dream was always meant to be built on your backs, not to include you. But you can take part in it, Steve Harvey. If you marginalize your people, you can take part in it, Roland Martin. If you mislead your people, you can take part in it, but you can never empower the whole. What do you think got Dr. King killed? Dr. King ruffled feathers and ticked off Southern racists for more than a decade. Nobody killed him. Why? Because he was talking about the dream in the beginning. He just wanted to be a part of it. He wanted to integrate his people, but even he had to admit that he integrated his people into a burning house. And his mindset started to change. He started to understand the economic element and component involved, that no matter how many schools he got his people into, if he didn't have access to economic equality, it wasn't going to matter. So he started talking about, we need to be paid for what you've gotten from us. And in less than a year, he was dead. Now, what most people won't tell you about, most people haven't researched, is that in 1999, the U.S. government was found complicit and involved directly in his murder. This is not something I'm making up. I don't know if it's still on YouTube, but I can tell you for sure that the video clips of the entire trial were out there. Absolutely out there. And let me tell you what happened. I'll tell you a synopsis. Then I'll shut it down. And I'm going to get to the gym. I'll tell you a synopsis. King became a threat when he started talking about cashing a check. Because remember, in his dream speech, he said he wrote a check that came back in insufficient funds. But then in 1967, he started talking about cashing a check. And so it became about reparations. It became about financial equality, economic equality. Now he's ruffling the wrong feathers. The U.S. government contacted, and I'm telling you what came out in the trial, not some bull crap conspiracy theory. I'm telling you what came out in the trial, in testimony, to the point that the jury found the United States complicit. They contacted a hitman. Not a hitman, they contacted a mobster in New Orleans who basically was operating as a snitch for the government because he had gotten caught up in some racketeering. And they told him what they wanted done. That mobster hired a hitman out of Houston. Dr. King's itinerary was forwarded to this hitman. It was then determined that Memphis is going to be the place. What got me wasn't that the hitman was hired. This whole James Earl Ray thing, put that out the window. Hitman hired. Okay. This wasn't some guy that just got a wild hair in his butt to kill Dr. King. That went out the window with this trial. Okay. So the hitman is there. What got me wasn't the fact that a hitman, that they did the underground, black, thing like that. That happens. That's the reality of it. This whole idea that this country is some moral empire is bullcrap. Everything in this country has been built on terrorism, lies, and destruction. This is what this country has done. You got to think about how this country started. Okay. Now, do you have opportunities in this country that you don't have in other places in the world? Absolutely. You got to make it in your mind where you want to stand in that. But the thing that America is moral, anything that moves against America is evil, you got to put that aside. There's a reason why we're hated. We got our hands in everybody's business. We're always mad and telling because we're protecting the things that produce and set the power, oil, in territory, and so much more. Anyway, here we go. Not only did they hire a hitman, it was set and proved in court that they scrambled a special forces unit to Memphis so that if the hitman missed, they were going to get him anyway. I'm like, this is not something I'm making up. This is something that actually came out. You need to watch this video so you can see it for yourself. And it was proven this was actually the U.S. government lost The King family won. And so this is the government we're dealing with. So what does that tell you? Our power doesn't lie in voting. It lies in economic empowerment. And you can vote all you want to, but if you don't have an economic foundation on which to leverage against those you put in office, they have no fear of you. You've got to have economic power. You've got to have economic power. But this whole idea of Roland talking about fake conscious Negroes, fake historians, bots, everything is fake and fraudulent that challenges him, that challenges his position that the Democrats are our saviors, that the lesser of two evils philosophy produces positive results. No, we're talking about a right wing and a left wing. Oh man, no, the government's involved in all that stuff. Man, you go all the way back, Malcolm, Medgar, Dr. Marcus Garvey, and all this here. But look, we've got a lot to learn and grow and do. And my thing is, like I said, and all right, talk then, Maximum. Let's go and put that up there. That's the one. And here's the thing. We need to hold anyone that claims to speak for us accountable. That starts with me and everybody else. We got to hold them accountable. So my thing is, I think I've proven this. For me to sit up there and come at somebody directly means that I'm really, really plexed. Dude has never taken a shot at me. I'm probably not even on his radar. I don't have enough followers to even be a mosquito bite. But I have to call a spade a spade. Same thing with Steve Harvey, Stephen A. Smith, Charles Barkley, Jason Whitlock. People that I see specifically that I know better and are throwing narratives out there that are not conducive to real, true Black unity and growth. And they are solely looking out for their own bottom line and their own position at the table and not the collective growth. You've heard me say this many times before. As long as I remain an anomaly among my people, I have not succeeded. As long as the things that I've been able to experience are unique to me as a Black man, then I have not succeeded. I am not satisfied with being able to navigate the system because I navigated well. I have a number of resources that are non-Black. And then many times when things got hectic, if it wouldn't have been for those resources, I don't know what would have happened. But those people know I'm Black first. Will always be Black first. Will never put anybody before Blackness. Doesn't mean I'm going to mistreat anybody. It means that somebody has to stand for something and be about something. Dr. King said that a man that does not have something for which he is willing to die is not fit to live. The question is, what are you willing to die for? How does that look to you? What's the distance you're willing to go? I'm going to stand on the truth. Come rain, sleet, hell, high water, threats. I've gotten them all. I've lost clients in my business because of my stance as a Black person and what I do in the Black community and what I do on this particular channel in specific. I've lost clients in my business because some kind of way it got back to them and their request was for me to turn it down. Tune it down. You can say something, but no, I'm going to speak exactly how I feel. I'm going to speak from the love and passion for my people that I have, and I'm going to speak honestly and truthfully. If it's making you uncomfortable, maybe you need to do something on your side to change that. I'm not here to make white people comfortable. I'm not here to create that bridge. You want to create that bridge, you create it. I'm going to stand with my people because I'm traveling the road they're traveling. I'm not leaving them behind. I'm not going to play some front man. You don't think I can with everything that I've been able to do, that I could have found a position and played a front man and did well, very well, putting up bull crap in front of my people to convince them of something that really wasn't going to help them? You don't think I'm articulate enough to really sit down and do that? That's not where I'm at. I'm at a place where I want to leave a legacy that my great-grandchildren can be proud of. I want to leave a legacy that speaks of me long after I'm gone. I don't want my last breath to be the last time the world hears from me. That's what I'm working on. I'm working on something that somewhere down the line, somebody will look back and say, a turning point was when, and my name be in the conversation. It don't have to be the pivotal point. It just, I want it in the conversation of one of the people who stood up and came and put in the work. That's what I want. On that note, look, I'm gonna get out of here. I wasn't in meaning to be this long, but it amazes me. If you want to hear the bull crap that was actually said and how he uses other people to validate his position and his points, it's amazing how bots are responsible for every challenge, and everybody's a fake historian because they don't align with your thinking. You know, I don't consider anybody fake that doesn't align just because they don't align with me. They have a different way of thinking and they have a different life experience. And their different life experience can give them a different perception. And I'm willing to respect that. I just need to see that you're working for the people and it's authentic, and that you're not selling the people out to get your position. If you're benefiting, riding good, and your people never growing, you got to ask yourself what's going on. The truth of the matter is, there's a whole group of Black front men and women that are being exposed. And the whole thing that they've been standing on, the whole structure that they've been standing on is on fire. And some are fighting for dear life to put it out and redirect. It's up to us to decide what we're going to do about that. On that note, I'm going to get out of here. Like I said, continue to show your love and support for what we do, because we need it. Support the out Black media, support the Black voice in particular. But whatever you do, get behind somebody that's going to bring truth to power and challenge the status quo. The status quo hasn't produced for us. So if we're riding the status quo, we can expect the same results. Whether I'm right or wrong, this is the one thing that you've got to be able to see, is what has been happening as far as status quo has not produced the desired result. That's for sure. Because socioeconomically, you can measure this. You can measure this over 50 years. There's no gain. There's actually a decline in many areas. We're losing historically Black neighborhoods. Harlem. In Houston, you got Third Ward. That's uptown now. They live in there. Yeah. And that's expanding. You got Harlem and parts of Brooklyn. They moving in. Historically, Black spots are being chewed up because we don't have the economic power, economic influence, the economic forethought to be proactive in the things that need to be done. And they don't require political permission by way of policy and vote. They require a change of thought. On that note, look, I'm gonna get out of here. And you guys have an unbelievable day, and we will get back together probably Monday. I'm out.